Hi, everyone. Welcome back from lunch. I hope you're enjoying your food coma. And welcome to Session E, Working Lands. I am Rebecca Brown, the Land Development and Cover Implementation Strategy Lead from the DNR side of the Habitat HSIL, and I will be your moderator for this session. So protecting natural areas and working lands from development is one of the core strategies for the Puget Sound recovery and a focus of the Land Development and Cover Implementation Strategy. In this session, you will hear about 6 projects from across the Sound that focus on protecting working forests and agricultural land, supporting the viability of these working lands, and adapting to climate change. These projects rely on innovative funding, building capacity, collaborative projects, and direct engagement with landowners to do incredible work to protect and steward these lands for future generations. We have 6 presentations today. We've got 4 5-minute lightning rounds and then 2 longer talks, and we are going to try to save questions for the end if we have time. Kicking it out, starting us off today is Alexandra James, who will be talking about a Capital Land Trust project.
Okay, hello everyone. My name is Alexandra James, and I currently work for Capital Land Trust as the organization's conservation director. And I'm excited to be here today to share information about our HSIL project. And here's the funding disclaimer slide. And I want to start my presentation off by just giving you a little introduction to Capital Land Trust, who we are and what we do and how we do our work. So we are a local nonprofit based in, or I suppose headquartered in Olympia, Washington. And we're a nonprofit dedicated to conserving and caring for land and water in the South Puget Sound and Chehalis Basin watersheds forever. So our work is in perpetuity. We were founded in 1987 by a group of community members that were concerned about water quality along a local creek in Thurston County. And since our inception, we've worked to conserve approximately 7,000 acres. And just last month, we celebrated our 20th mile of Puget Sound shoreline protected across the region that we serve. So we work across 4 counties, Thurston, Mason, Lewis, and Grays Harbor counties. And we work to conserve and forever protect a range of landscapes, anywhere from forests to farms, to shorelines, to streams. And we work on a voluntary basis with landowners and partners to permanently protect land. And we are not the only ones doing this type of work. There are about 40 land trusts across Washington state alone, and nearly 1,500 across the nation. And for Capital Land Trust, we acknowledge that there is immense growth occurring and change in our region, which is great and exciting, but it also gives us an opportunity to make choices. And as land use continues to change and we continue to experience climate impacts, and as these impacts intensify, there are limited opportunities for us to protect the places that matter most for clean water, habitat, and resilience. And some of these lands are simply too important to lose, and once they're gone, they're hard to get back. So what we do now helps shape the place that we work in for decades. And I also want to share that although we do work to primarily conserve and protect important lands and working lands, we also believe in connecting people to nature. And so we have opened 4 public access preserves within our portfolio. We have 2 in Thurston County and 2 up in Mason County. And through this work and opening up 4 of our preserves, we're able to invite community members to experience conservation firsthand and make a connection to why conservation is important and important to the resilience of the Puget Sound landscape. Okay, so now I'm going to jump into our project, our HSIL project. So our project's titled Advancing Land Protection in South Puget Sound. And I'm going to talk a little bit about our goals, achievements, and future work. So overall, this project increases capacity and professional skill sets within the Land Trust staff to lead strategic land acquisition and protection projects, as well as enhancement projects in the South Puget Sound. And this funding has been so crucial and so monumental for us as it provides critical funding that supports our work with conserving and protecting the ecological health of the Puget Sound and its adjacent landscapes. And we all know that conserving this type of land for their ecological benefits ensures long-term access to natural resources that mitigate adverse activities and help us adapt to changing environmental conditions. So our project includes 3 goals with 8 objectives. Our first goal is to advance land protection and public access projects in the South Puget Sound. And our objectives to support this goal is to sustain and increase our conservation staff to advance conservation easement and fee acquisition transactions. Our second objective is to sustain and increase conservation staff to advance public access improvement activities on 2 of our public access preserves. And our third objective under this goal is to fund conservation staff participation in regional conservation-focused partnership groups. Our second goal is to use GIS to advance strategic acquisitions in the South Puget Sound. So under this goal, we have 3 other objectives. One is to increase conservation staff technical experience in GIS. Our second objective is to increase conservation staff practical application of GIS mapping tools. And our third is to sustain and increase conservation staff to develop land prioritization GIS mapping tools. And our third goal was to enhance and safeguard conservation values on our conserved lands. And so under this goal, our first objective is to advance conservation staff expertise in long-term restoration and land management planning. Our second objective is to sustain conservation staff to develop, at minimum, 2 land management plans for our conserved lands. So our achievements to date, we've been able to engage with 40 landowners, and this funding has helped to support or is currently supporting 10 acquisition projects. Since we've received this funding, we've protected 2 acres. I know that seems small, but it's mighty 2 acres that expand a 22-acre preserve already conserved by the Land Trust. And this funding has supported 10 jobs within the Land Trust. We've also been able to participate in 36 partner meetings to date, which is critical. As a nonprofit, and as a Land Trust, we get invited to participate in partnerships. Our perspectives are valued, but we often have to find funding to allow us to participate in these groups. So this funding has allowed for us to do that. We've also engaged in 10 hours of GIS training courses for our staff, and we've completed 3 land management plans to date. And we've also developed a suite of new resources. So we have new map layout templates that we use for GIS mapping, and we have developed how-to documents for map layouts and using GIS. And we've transitioned successfully to ArcPro, which is big for us as well. So what's next? We plan to engage at least 10 new landowners per quarter through 2027 with this funding. We'll continue to support in-progress acquisitions. Our hope is to develop 2 new acquisition projects with this funding and successfully conserve 100 acres. We plan to complete phase 1 of one of our improvement projects at one of our public access preserves, and to begin phase 2 planning for both public access preserves mentioned earlier. We plan to implement our GIS land prioritization mapping tool. We plan to publish a story map about one of our preserves, and we plan to participate in 6 additional professional development opportunities. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexandra. Next, you'll hear from Rowan Braybrook from the Northwest Natural Resource Group.
There we go. Good afternoon. My name's Rowan Braybrook, and I'm the Director of Programs at Northwest Natural Resource Group. We are a nonprofit based in Seattle, and we work throughout the Puget Sound area. We focus on ecological forestry and working with different landowners on how to manage their lands. And for the purposes of this talk, we're also privileged to coordinate the Puget Sound Seed Partnership, which is a relatively new endeavor that blossomed out of the Forest Adaptation Network. So this project really evolved out of pandemic era discussions from the Forest Adaptation Network, where we were discussing gaps that we were seeing in supply chains for plant materials, issues that we were seeing with restoration, lack of genetic diversity with a lot of the seed stock that we were accessing for restoration projects, and discussions with a lot of our different partners about what those specific gaps looked like and what some potential responses were where we could help identify and start to fill those gaps. And in talking with partners, a lot of the issues identified included having the right information about what seeds were being sourced, having access to genetically diverse seedlings and seeds, having the correct training in order to source those seeds, clean them, store them, and use them in restoration contexts, and then also having those connections with other restoration partners that might have that information where you might not have it in-house. So our initial idea that started focusing on just training really expanded to include a more diverse set of activities to really support a lot of those practitioners who are out in the field and using plant materials in order to restore different areas around Puget Sound. So the purpose of this group is to provide higher quality and more accessible seeds and seedlings for restoration projects around Puget Sound, and we have a lot of great partners that we work with, including some of the folks that you see up on screen. We really leverage a lot of those partnerships and the expertise in those different partnerships in order to dial in what's needed in different plant material areas. So my organization works in forests, but we have very little expertise in meadowscapes, so we're definitely relying on some of our other partners for meadowscapes or working with Oxbow in agricultural lands, working with the Skagit River System Cooperative on riparian areas. So it's really a wonderful partnership that we've developed in order to lean on those different expertise areas for the different kind of niche seed sourcing needs. In terms of project goals, the goals that we identified in collaboration with our partners were to increase the technical and training opportunities that were available locally, increase access to plant materials, especially genetically diverse ones that, with an eye to a changing climate, might be more robust long-term, engage with the different communities that are working on seed sourcing, and it is really a very diverse range of communities that work in the seed world, and then also provide some of that technical assistance to help practitioners make wise choices for long-term restoration projects. In terms of how we're doing that, we're working on consolidating resources from different partners, developing resources where we see gaps, and centralizing resources where they already exist, and facilitating discussions on where there might be additional gaps to grow more resources in the future. We're providing direct hands-on information through local case study field tours and seed sourcing trainings that are trying to connect the entire seed sourcing lifespan, as it were, from sourcing the seeds out in the field, cleaning them, storing them, correctly labeling them, and making sure that is relatively standard across different projects. And then we're also creating a platform for exchanging seeds and providing technical assistance to different restoration projects in the area. So far, last year, we already held our first training and field tour and have had a lot of progress on a lot of our other objectives for this process, and just wanted to mention in terms of reflection of what we've seen so far is it's a really diverse community of interest around seeds. A lot of different communities from farming to riparian restoration, forest managers, government entities, individual private landowners. We've seen a really broad array of interest for these topics. And also a high level of youth interest, which when it comes to land management, I wouldn't say it's always unusual, but it's definitely notable, the incredibly high level of youth engagement and interest that we've had in these seed sourcing discussions. And there are also some very common challenges that different communities have voiced around tracking the seeds, having common definitions, and getting access to land where they can gather those genetically diverse seeds. What's next? We have a full slate of activities this year, including a webinar tomorrow. So if anyone is really interested in Northwest seed zones, you can join us at lunch tomorrow, and you can find information on our website. We're also kicking off our summer field tours in May, starting with a meadowscapes restoration project. And we're looking forward later this summer to having some targeted seed trainings to go really in depth on seed sourcing and training for youth. So we're always interested in engaging with additional community partners. If anyone is interested, wants to participate in tours, there's more information on our website. We're always happy to work with new partners. And other than that, thanks so much for listening, and thanks for the work that you do.
Thank you, Rowan. I just love hearing about these projects. So next up, we have Greg Hood. And he'll talk about a Skagit River System Cooperative project.
Okay, so I'm going to talk to you today about sea level rise, potential impacts in the Skagit Delta. And these are my collaborators, Devin Smith at the Co-op, Nick Ward and Peter Regier at Pacific Northwest National Laboratory, and Jude Apple at Padilla Bay. And let me just tell you a little bit about our thinking. So a while back, it occurred to me that one of the things that's missing when it comes to habitat restoration in the Skagit Delta is long-term strategic thinking. We have a Chinook recovery plan, of course, but we need to think even longer term than that. And one of the reasons I was thinking about that is because we have a lot of low-lying areas in the Skagit Delta. This is LIDAR on the right here. And the pink areas that are near Skagit Bay, adjacent to Skagit Bay, here at the kind of the lower left, those pink areas are unvegetated intertidal flats. And if you look landward of the sea dikes, we have a bunch of pink areas in the Skagit farmlands, very low elevation areas. And so, one of the things that jumped out at me is, well, what happens with sea level rise? Do these low areas start to get flooded by groundwater flooding? Does salinity intrusion become an issue there? And from the point of view of habitat restoration for salmon, are these areas that potentially in the future might become economically unviable for farming, and therefore perhaps economically some impetus for restoring these, and be in the economic interest of the landowners to sell these properties at some point, who knows when, but maybe we should start thinking about that, and maybe we should start trying to plan about that. And so when you're thinking about sea level rise in an agricultural system like this, there's greater river flooding risk, of course, everyone's been thinking about that, but there's also potentially greater groundwater flooding as a risk as well. There's salinity intrusion as a risk. There's more difficulty draining your property because your property is not going to drain down into the soils, and even if you're draining into ditches that are then emptying into sound, well, as sea level rise goes up, drainage is harder because you're being blocked actually by high waters. So you might have to pump instead of draining. Of course, there's other adaptation things that you can do, like dike and levee maintenance and building higher or pulling the dikes back. crop selection responses to climate change. All these are possible agricultural responses. Natural systems are kind of inherently a little more resilient if you have natural processes that are functioning. And the critical ones here are sediment supply and even sediment routing. It's basically how is sediment being delivered and where is it being delivered in the delta. And if you have sufficient sediment and you have good routing, then your marshes can keep up with sea level rise. So we're seeing already marsh percolation and erosion depending on sediment routing to a large degree, and that can be affected by management choices like restoring old distributaries, for example. And of course, there's plant species changes that can occur as part of climate change and sea level rise. So the question is, can we predict areas of risk? That's what HSIL is helping us look at with groundwater modeling. So the PNNL is doing three-dimensional numerical modeling of groundwater in these areas and salinity intrusion, not just the groundwater itself. And we're focusing on, the idea is looking at some of these vulnerable areas that are particularly low elevation. And so these things really jump out at you. And I'm going to focus on the areas up in the north where we have some pilot projects, some pilot study projects. So our first project was over in the left here, this site here. This is on Swinomish tribal property, and so we had property owners' permission to go out there and do some work. And one of the things we found there, we've got hill slopes off to the west. There's a lot of freshwater input from those hill slopes. We have, of course, the tides that can move back and forth. And one of the interesting things we found here with sea level rise and the groundwater interaction is that the western part of that site actually stays very fresh. There's not much salinity intrusion because you have the hill slope interaction. But on the Swinomish Channel side, that little sliver in there actually gets pretty salty. So there's these two very different behaving parts of the site that's being affected by the channel in between them, that old distributary channel between them. That's actually acting as kind of a hydrological wall that separates the two sites from the point of view of groundwater influences. And so part of it gets really salty and part of it doesn't. All of it gets flooded with higher sea level rise. So that was actually a very interesting site because, it was a surprise to find out that two parts of the site are behaving really dramatically differently because of this channel that goes through the middle of them. Now, our next project that we're working on right now with HSIL funding is the red outline up there on the upper right, and that's Padilla Bay property. They own some agricultural lands, and part of their mandate is to develop best practices for agriculture in coastal settings. And so they were very receptive to us doing a similar kind of study on their property. And now there's a lot of spatial heterogeneity, as you can imagine, throughout this large delta. And so what we learned in the Swinomish ag lands is not necessarily what we will learn in the Padilla Bay property. And I think one of the things that's going to be really interesting about Padilla Bay is we have a lot of channels coming in from the bay there. As you can see, those kind of dark blue channel-looking features that I think are likely to be areas where we'll get influences of sea level rise, water moving in along those channel bottoms, those channel sediments. Also adjacent to that is WDF properties outlined in black. And then part of this project is going to be talking with the agricultural community who are going to be interested in this. And so Padilla Bay is a nice bridge for the tribes and the agricultural community, which can sometimes have a tense relationship. And so they're going to help mediate that in the course of talking about our results for modeling here on Padilla Bay's property. And Padilla Bay has the same kind of interest, and the tribes do too, about managing their property in the future. It's like, how do we respond? All of us want to know how to respond to sea level rise and what's our best options in the future. And then I want to leave you with this graph. I feel like this is my social obligation to point this out, that we think about planning sometimes up to 2100. And in fact, we need to be thinking further along than that. But when you look at this graph, this is from NASA, from the Earth Observatory website, and you look at high emissions versus low emissions, that really makes a difference. And so people who tell you that, oh, it doesn't make a difference or we're all doomed or whatever, lowering emissions makes a huge difference when it comes to the rates of sea level rise. So just want to leave you with that little public service announcement. And thank you.
Thank you, Greg. All right, so now we'll hear from Paul Cheragino, and he'll talk about a Thurston Conservation District project.
Let's see, find my little arrows. There they are. Okay. My name is Paul Cheragino. I'm now at Thurston Conservation District, and this is our project Building Conservation Capacity in South Sound, which begs the question, what exactly is conservation capacity, and how do you build it? So the challenges to the capacity of a local team are really clear. The funding and regulatory systems are kind of a mess. Our community is rightfully preoccupied with their busy lives, and we damage ecosystems as if our economy depended on it. But we do have this constant flow of friends and opportunities that come by. And so in this context, Thurston Conservation District is aiming to restore a 180,000-acre riverscape with 4 project managers and 1 field crew. So who couldn't do with a little extra capacity? So usually, when I hear capacity, it's a euphemism for unrestricted cash flow, right? Money I can spend right now to get the job done that I need getting done. And so in building an industry on restricted grants, we generally deprive our conservation industry of that flexibility. So conservation is this complex system in constant motion. Opportunities are showing up, and you have to move on something or try and take advantage of an opportunity or create an opportunity. So our challenge with this award is to take advantage of this temporary bump in less restricted cash and turn that into durable infrastructure, right? Because how shall we help Paul and his colleagues solve their problem? There are really 3 ways to increase capacity. One is to hire more people. Thank you very much. I'm now here. And the other is to stop having us spend time doing things that don't create value, and we're all working on that. It's kind of been hard for most of my career that way. And so the third, door number 3, is to try and build durable tools that will still function if the money runs out, preferably that we can use to trigger what I would call non-linear effects. So instead of filling the bucket 1 cup at a time, is there something we can do to change the nature of the game we're playing with? So this grant is allowing the district to work with partners to focus on 6 targets. So lots of different things we're thinking about. And half of our award is immediately going to land trusts because land conversion in Thurston County is brutal. And you can't operate in a real estate market if you don't have cash in hand to start transactions rolling. So we've been providing capacity and a pass-through to all 4 of our local land trusts, and then having conversations about what's getting in their way and what they need and what needs to be done. Sort of back at the Conservation District, we're really kind of focusing our attention on our capabilities as a social organism. How can we create synergy and coherence among partners, creating umbrella agreements, rapidly moving cash between different partners to meet opportunities. And so this is largely sort of a contracting infrastructure sort of project. And a third area is a focus on trying to leverage place-based knowledge systems and even large language models, and that we're just swimming in information. I think I did a quick scan of Deschutes River, and we had, I think, maybe around 12,000 pages, maybe 60 reports. No one reads all that, but there's all kinds of information in there that's useful for trying to understand how ecosystems are functioning. So this is sort of a comment this morning about sort of place-based knowledge and how do we use that in order to try and create accountability. So a fourth is we have these hundreds of supporters across every watershed. These are people that show up at the Conservation District and they want to participate in ecosystem recovery, and we don't have a job for them to do. So how do we do community empowerment? And I don't mean like environmental education. I mean taking people that care about the ecosystem and think about it like a union organizer and think about how do we turn their passion into power. And then fifth, I think we still exploit desperate college graduates as cheap construction labor in the restoration industry. And I think that we need high quality boots on the ground with skills, knowledge, equipment, capabilities, specialized tools. And so one of the moves we're making at the district is trying to shift into a professional crew and double from 1 crew to 2 crews in order to meet the needs of all of our partners in the county. Often that kind of skilled labor is a limiting capacity in our ability to do work and leverage the resources that are coming down. And then finally, we lack systematic mechanisms for quantifying ecosystem services for practical applications. And so we've used this funding to leverage underfunding to start working on a project with the county to look across the suite of ecosystem services and come up with strategies for how to bring those into play in our economic and social systems. So notice, these are not traditional sort of widget-based projects. These are not acres. These are not a new prioritization scheme. These are attempts to try and develop sort of systematic strategies for cultivating an industry that can support a culture that can achieve stewardship of landscapes. So, in closing, I'd like to suggest conservation districts are a natural place to build community infrastructure. We are responsible for keeping current, preparing a comprehensive long-range program. It's in state law. And so I think that comprehensiveness is a lot of value there. We're talking about water, supply, quantity, quality, biodiversity, food security, disaster preparedness, community resilience in a comprehensive program. And so I think I would encourage you, since we're locally and democratically governed, to make us embrace the spirit of this law to the best of your ability. So please give me a call if you'd like to collaborate or talk more.
Thanks, Paul. Okay, now we're going to hear from Stacy Dixon on a Snohomish Conservation District project.
Hi, everyone. My name is Stacy Dixon. I'm the Senior Forestry Program Manager at the Snohomish Conservation District. And thanks, Paul, for giving such a great introduction to conservation districts and what we do. My team of foresters across the Puget Sound received a HSIL award in the last round, and we were able to hire foresters at conservation districts to provide some technical assistance to landowners. And in this next round, we expanded that to include 11 conservation districts total, so it's a lot of land that we're covering, and we're working off of the behavior change investment priority. So we're working with landowners to incentivize them to steward their forests and really take care of that upper watershed area. We're hoping to support long-term viability of working forests, help landowners meet their natural resource goals, and expand our Puget Sound Conservation District Regional Forestry Program, which is this collection of foresters. And we meet monthly to share resources and engage and make sure that we're providing the best quality assistance to landowners possible. So the scope of this work really has 3 components. The first one is broader impacts and communication. So we are trying to reach a wider audience, forest landowners, of course, but also non-forest landowners that do play a part in stewarding our natural resources in a variety of ways. And we wanted to reach this broader community through a series of new educational materials and videos, one of which I'll show today. The second component of this work is better interagency organization and collaboration. So when we first started across all the conservation districts, we were really the main players serving landowners. And since then, there's been an influx of funding for stewarding forest resources for private landowners, particularly through the DNR, and we felt that there was a greater need to collaborate and make sure we're using our funding to the best of our ability, and we have done that. We've created a lot of collaborative workshops and events where DNR and Conservation District foresters are working together. And then lastly, we're hoping to expand and just continue to provide that technical assistance to landowners, which comes in the form of one-on-one personalized site visits where we're walking their forest together and answering questions. And then a big part of this work is moving into the implementation phase. So yes, we're having conversations with landowners, but then we're also implementing projects on their properties. So just some numeric numbers here. As far as impact, we've provided already 621 personalized site visits to landowners. So we're out there in the community. We've connected with over 800 households. We've created new outreach materials, some long form videos and short form videos, and then we've afforested over 12 acres. So, qualitatively, we just not just thinking about the numbers. This results in one-on-one connections with landowners. So, we've heard that our forester had the best insight at the beginning and continues to provide guidance when we need it. Snohomish CD has been an essential part of our stewardship program. So we're really helping landowners overcome the anxiety of managing large acreage and getting them to finish their management plans and then ideally to implement those practices, connecting them with cost share, connecting them with tax programs in their area. So a couple of the sub-projects for this award that I really wanted to highlight that have been really rewarding are that we were able to implement 5 afforestation projects across the Puget Sound. So these are planting sites that are on unused, abandoned pasture land primarily, oftentimes with a new landowner that does not have the skill set as the previous owner, and there's an opportunity to increase the carbon sequestration of that site as well as the wildlife benefit and the carbon storage. I'm sorry, I said carbon storage, but yes, the multiple values of this property. So through this afforestation, we planted seedlings and then also got the chance to experiment a little bit, especially when we're dealing with compact soil with low nutrients. We used biochar, testing out whether that was going to improve the viability of our seedlings. We also explored variable density planting, which is a somewhat new forest practice in this area to try to increase the heterogeneity of a site at the start of the forest rather than just the end. We also used climate-focused seed selection, so planting seeds from a southern seed zone, and tracked those through additional monitoring. And I just want to highlight one of these projects, which was out on the San Juans, a 2-acre planting site, and it was an unused pasture on an alpaca farm, new landowners, and upslope from a priority watershed for salmon recovery. And on this site, we were able to establish 300 oak acorns and seedlings, and it was a dry site, and we were able to use thermal drone imagery to determine planting sites, and the landowners are now using that space in a new way that's benefiting the natural resources. So programmatically, these afforestation programs are really important for us. We're trying to address this, priority landscape concern of conversion to non-forest conditions, especially called out in the Western Washington Forest Health Strategic Plan, which I have a map up here. A lot of our service areas fall under that high priority zone. And so although 12 acres is not much, we're using these as demonstration sites for workshops and events where other landowners can come out, consider what it would be like to convert their unused lawn to forest. And so we're hoping to incentivize a little bit more of that work going forward. Another major component of this work is just better communication with the public. So we've created a number of really beautiful outreach materials. We have an in-house designer that's doing this. This one that I have highlighted up here is on wildfire risk reduction and creating an action plan for landowners, just one step at a time so they don't feel too overwhelmed. We have a checklist for common action needs and permits for landowners, as well as just highlighting the benefits of forest ecosystems for climate resilience. So some additional tools and outreach communication materials that are available for all programs in the Puget Sound if it's useful. We've created a social media campaign where it brings landowners and residents through the process of a working forest, getting them connected with the idea that trees are going to grow and then be cut down, and that's going to help our local economies as well as bring wood to our building sector. And so we're hoping that seeing some of these materials can help people understand that they're connected to this larger process. So a couple of the other outreach materials that I wanted to share was that we had 2 long-form videos, one directed for non-forest landowners regarding the importance of their forests to the regarding just the importance of all forests to Puget Sound residents and how we're all connected to these systems. And then another incentivizing forest stewardship for forest landowners. So I wanted to share the one for non-forest landowners. We often hear in the forestry community when there's conflict around harvest, oh, if only people knew, if only people understood that this is part of the solution, that working lands is an important component to our solution to climate change in this area. And so we're just trying to address that a little bit with this video.
Washington is the evergreen state for good reason. Our forests are vast and varied, from the green carpet of the high mountains, to commercial timberlands, to our backyard woods. Every part of our forest land is a valuable piece of the whole. And although we may not see it, these forests are quietly working for all of us. They clean our air, provide homes for wildlife, capture carbon, fuel livelihoods, provide sustainable building materials, and give us space to find awe. Whether you live near or far from a forest in Washington, it is hard at work for you. And it's up to all of us to keep Washington's forests forever green.
So that was produced by Caravan Labs, an amazing partner, and they produce a lot of great educational materials in this field. But if folks go to that link, they can find volunteer opportunities. They'll find all those educational materials regarding forest stewardship. They'll find ways to reach out to their local forester. So we're really having this call to action of why don't you be part of this effort. So just wanted to share that. And then as far as other impacts, it was also just extremely important to have this funding over the last year as we saw a shortfall in our funding from the state. And I just wanted to share that without this HSIL funding, we would have had to move FTEs around, we would have had to cut forestry programs across the Puget Sound. And so continuing this on-the-ground work with foresters, connecting with landowners has allowed us to maintain our services under really high demand conditions. We're still writing many management plans, and we're signing people up for cost share, and that's because of this funding. As far as what's next for us, we will continue to collaborate across the Puget Sound with our monthly meetings where we ask experts to come in and give us updates, as well as we hope to continue our afforestation projects, and then we're also expanding our work into thinning, just addressing another need for a lot of our forests here in the Puget Sound. So thank you to my funders.
The video worked. It's always like, woo, that was great. Thanks, Stacy. All right, so our last speaker here is Brian Benjamin, who is going to be presenting on a Thurston County project. So Brian, come on up.
All right. Hi, everybody. I'm Brian Benjamin. I'm the Natural Resources Program Manager at Thurston County, which is sort of a perfectly nondescript job title. I oversee the Habitat Conservation Plan implementation in Thurston County, and I also oversee our streamflow restoration program. And since 2024, I've been overseeing this project, which has been exciting. I want to thank US EPA, WDFW, and Washington DNR for supporting our jurisdiction and completing this work. I also want to thank the project team for their significant contributions to our project, which includes a variety of county staff, our consultant teams from ESA and MFA, and all the participants of the technical advisory group, two of which are here today, for their generosity with their time and their feedback that was instrumental to our project's outcomes. You'll also forgive me, I uploaded the version of our PowerPoint. I'll be reading. Strategy document, which is intended to inform Thurston County leadership on meaningful actions that can improve conservation outcomes for working lands. So we're looking to develop a document that we can hand to our board and other leadership in the county to give them a playbook of things that we can do to achieve meaningful conservation in our region. The county wanted this strategic planning initiative and the funding from HSIL to ensure realized conservation outcomes. We embedded these guiding principles into our work on the screen. Planning efforts should be actionable. They should provide commitment to remove barriers to outcomes and participation in conservation programming. And they should provide funding solutions for conservation, restoration, and long-term operations and maintenance, and create a table that offered meaningful involvement opportunities to our regional conservation partners to shape analyses and provide feedback on our study results. As I'm sure many of us in the room know, it's easy to set a goal for meaningful engagement and involvement, but much harder to deliver. For this project, we assembled a technical advisory group consisting of staff from regional conservation organizations, local ag operations, and working forest land interests. Our TAG participants included representatives from Partners for Fish and Wildlife, WDFW, Chehalis Tribe, Pierce County, American Farmland Trust, Washington Farmland Trust, Community Farmland Trust, Capital Land Trust, Nisqually Land Trust, Nisqually River Foundation, Nisqually Community Forest, Eco Studies Institute, Olympia Ecosystems, JBLM, WSU Extension, Thurston Conservation District, and Thurston Regional Planning Council, Creekside Conservancy, and Colvin Ranch. So it's always fun for me to rattle off an impressive list of attendees. And I want to thank all our TAG partner organizations for giving me that opportunity, and more seriously, for the significant time investment in our project. But having cool friends at our party doesn't prove anyone actually had fun. So I wanted to highlight that our TAG process delivered meaningful opportunities, and that we have two easy metrics to support that we did deliver a meaningful engagement opportunity for participants. Folks who attended kept coming back, and each TAG meeting had more participants than the last. So thanks everyone for their time in joining us for those meetings. So I want to explain what we're highlighting today. In addition to this large TAG process that occurred over 2 years, our project entailed a lot of research and analysis, most of it new and innovative for our county. By the end of the project, we will have submitted over 70 project deliverables, most of which consist of policy findings and recommendations that will constitute a strategic planning document that will go to our board and county leadership. So the breadth of this project left me with a challenge in deciding what to share with you today. But we decided that two novel elements of our project were probably the most exciting. Our GIS analysis and resultant maps showing farmland and working forest extent through a multi-benefit opportunity framework. And then second, our financial forecasting and modeling exploring relative benefits of two conservation tax programs available to local jurisdictions. So in addition to defining farmland extent and developing a multi-benefit opportunity heat map, our GIS analysis also provided a compilation of supporting context layers, a full review of GIS methodology by a subgroup of the technical advisory group, and an embedded visual approach to apply our multi-benefit framework away from parcel-based analyses and parcel boundaries to help anonymize our findings and better demonstrate conservation opportunity patterns across our landscape, which we felt was important to relieve pressure from this kind of analysis from specific property owners. Our maps are not meant to guide property-specific decision-making, nor is it a blueprint meant to guide acquisition efforts. These maps do two very simple things. show our board, county leadership, and anyone interested in conservation in Thurston County where working lands are, and demonstrate where conservation investments of any kind could have the highest return on value through investing in a multi-benefit analysis. In addition to spatial extent and multi-benefit framework, there are invisible considerations that won't appear in the mapping, but I thought would be good to share. We considered funding compatibility, previously conserved properties, conversion risk factors, and overlap in farm and forest land, as we found through our study that these industries are often under co-ownership or co-located in a manner that makes them difficult to fully untie. So here's our farmland opportunity heat map, and what you're seeing is sort of an anonymized representation of 60,000 acres of active farmland across the county, and you have a gradient from white to dark purple of where multi-benefits exist across the landscape of working farms in the county. So that would include critical areas overlap, regulatory initiatives, previously conserved through easement or acquisition by conservation partners. And this is a really important tool for us to just understand and show our board and county leadership and community where active farming is happening in Thurston County. Similarly, here's our working forest opportunity heat map. We're looking at about 275,000, 280,000 acres of land and about 52,000 acres of overlap with farmland. So that really demonstrates the extent of overlap between working forests or lands that have the potential to provide harvest opportunities in the future. I want to give a special thanks to Susan O'Neill and Andy Wilson and the rest of the ESA team for their work on these important GIS tools. Moving on to our financial analysis, the two local conservation funding opportunities we looked at were a hypothetical increase to our Conservation Futures Tax Program and hypothetical implementation of a conservation REIT tax program. I want to highlight the modeling completed intentionally illustrates forecasted conservation outcomes in terms of acreage acquired in fee simple ownership. This is not intended to represent a realistic or desirable conservation strategy. We expect easements, match dollars, and other value-driven conservation approaches to greatly expand both acres conserved and add to a suite of metrics relevant to assessing program success. Instead, the assumption of fee simple acquisitions allows a simplified apples-to-apples comparison of conservation opportunities that both programs could realize, assuming that they're implemented. So I'm going to explain this graph briefly. We've got three scenarios across a 10-year forecast for CFT or Conservation Futures Tax programming. We have acres acquired if the county continued taxation at current rates, so no action or no increase. Acres acquired if the county increased taxation rate at a mid-level, and acres acquired if the county increased taxation rate to a maximum. We also broke out, based on land values, how many acres of working forest land or farmland we think could be achieved over that 10-year forecasted time, and then that includes an overlap of farms and working forests. You can see here that over 10 years at our current rate, we could conserve in fee simple 976 acres, at a mid-level increase 1,550 acres, and at our maximum 2,121 acres. The presentation is not progressing. Thank you. Similarly, this graph shows two 10-year forecasting scenarios if a conservation REIT tax were established. Acreage over 10 years if conservation REIT tax were implemented at 0.25%, and then acreage acquired over 10 years if conservation REIT tax were implemented at 1%. And so our lowest option that we modeled for conservation REIT gave us higher acreage conservation opportunities than CFT at 2,450 acres, and at our highest rate at 1% for real estate transactions, the opportunity over the next 10 years to conserve 9,790, 9,800 acres. So big difference in the two tax programs for local funding sources. I'll need the next slide, please. Okay, as we wrap up, in addition to this new and exciting analysis, at least for our jurisdiction, we also sought feedback from TAG participants on the performance of our existing conservation programming, with special focus on removing barriers and making investments in conservation outcomes that better reflect partner priorities for our conservation programs. I am particularly excited to share this list of changes that we have already made based on feedback received during this project. We reduced recording costs for conservation futures easement documentation. We streamlined conservation futures application processing for faster awarding. We reduced the open space tax program application fee from about $230 from $1,800, so a substantial $1,500 reduction. We established dedicated funding for streamflow restoration projects and integrated TDR into our 2025 rural housing updates in our comprehensive plan to improve market viability of that conservation initiative. And I also wanted to touch on what's coming next. So as we wrap up this project heading into June, we will be sharing the technical report and final strategy documents with our conservation partners, county leadership, and the public. We will be investing in additional planning for TDR programming, especially focused on rural-to-rural market creation to ensure that certificated rights that exist on our landscape now have buyers, and examining how publicly managed interagency conservation lands endowments could support long-term in perpetuity obligations to steward conserved lands, especially as changes in climate will challenge approaches to maintaining conservation values. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. And can we give all of our speakers another round of applause? We have time for like 1 or 2 questions for our speakers. If anyone has a burning one they want to ask. I'm not seeing any hands, which is fine. That's okay too. It looks like some other groups are coming back in. So we're at a break again. We'll come back here at 2:55 for a final panel session and some closing remarks. There are snacks behind you. You know where the drinks are. So yeah, we'll see you again in about 25 minutes. So thank you, everyone.
How we doing? Yeah? How we doing? Okay, there's a little bit more there. All right. Well, we are in the home stretch. I am Bree Turner. I'm on the Habitat Strategic Initiative team as the Marine Vegetation Implementation Strategy Lead. It's a mouthful, but it's a great job, and I'm so pleased to be here today to round out the summit with our final panel. And we have, let's see, we've got everyone settling in. Great. We are going to take us through a topic that hopefully is near and dear to all of you today. It's around partnerships and programs, how we sustain them, how we build them, and really having gone through the morning sessions really have really seen this theme already being explored a lot, even in our opening panel. And here we are really at the Habitat Strategic Initiative, really work to fund things that are not as, that have fewer funding sources, really. And Jennifer mentioned that earlier on. And that nitty-gritty work of developing partnerships, developing programs, and really sustaining those partnerships and programs is one of the things that HSIL has funded, and really taking those pilots, those partnerships, and really taking them all the way through from that development phase to the institutionalizing phase. And so this is a really great opportunity to learn from a handful of sub-awardees that have been doing this work. So we'll start out some introductions, and then we'll just have a free-flow, moderated session. I think we'll have some time at the end for some Q&A. And and I didn't know if that was the bell here. And I want to first, before diving in and getting some introductions, give a shout out to Damari up here in the front. Damari has been my co-facilitator with this session. If you haven't met her, she's lovely to work with, and she's one of our sub-award managers at HSIL. And I just want to take this moment to give a shout out to all of our 3 sub-award managers, Damari, Haley, Cam. I know you're around, but I really appreciate all the work. Yeah. Thank you. Really important work to make this all happen today. So, you ready? All right, so what we're gonna do is we'll start out down here with Brittany Gordon. And we're gonna have you start and then kind of walk us through. You actually have 2 different projects, and you work as the Natural Resource Coordinator in the Kitsap County Department of Community Development, and you work on habitat protection and salmon recovery work, natural resource management with the county, and you actually have a number of projects, but why don't you share one of your first projects that you want to?
Okay. Yeah, I'm Brittany Gordon. I'll share my first project, which is the Kitsap Natural Resource Asset Management Program, which is an innovative approach to managing natural resources as community assets in the public trust to be stewarded by the local government, as well as inventoried and planned for, similar to how built infrastructure is managed. The program uses asset management technology and terminology that's traditionally used for built infrastructure to track the condition of natural assets and to set goals for their function. The program relies on close partnerships with local tribes, including Suquamish, Skokomish, and Port Gamble-Sklallam tribes. And while natural asset management is a new concept to local governments, the tribes have been protecting and managing natural resources as shared assets to be cherished and stewarded since time immemorial. Additional key partners for KINRAMP include Washington Conservation Action Education Fund, Wildfish Conservancy, Ross Strategic and Kitsap County departments, and Kitsap County citizens. The KINRAMP program, as we call it, is integrated into our county comprehensive plan, and we use the information to inform planning through our existing planning processes like our transportation improvement program, our capital facilities plan, our parks and recreation open space plan, rural lands planning, and salmon recovery planning. And most importantly, KINRAMP helps us track no net loss and net ecological gain at the county-wide scale using geospatial data sources, and it helps us key in on important areas or strategies for protection or intervention.
Thank you. And again, welcome. We're getting to the end of the day, so I'm going to ask you a goofy question. Since we're talking about partnerships, do you have a favorite partnership, like a duo? It could be food, it could be music, a mashup, it could be sports.
I'm going to go with smoked salmon and coffee on a morning fishing trip in the fog out on the coast or in Puget Sound.
Wow, you surprised me on that one. That's nice. All right. We're going to move next to Emily Grayson. She is a marine ecologist with Washington Sea Grant and the program lead for the Washington Sea Grant crab team, a comprehensive program focused on monitoring control of European green crab. And she serves on the science seat on the Northwest Straits Commission and currently facilitates the oyster drill working group. Sounds cool. All right. You want to tell us a little bit about your HSIL project?
Sure, thanks, Bree. Yeah, CRAB team started in 2014 to meet a state agency mandate to monitor for an emerging threat from range expansion in the European green crab. It started with a citizen science program at its core, and as green crab has become more problematic in the state and more established, the program has had to grow and evolve in sort of commensurate ways to meet the changing landscape of management needs. So in addition to continuing with the flagship monitoring network, which is now about 70 sites around the state, just kicking off our season literally this week, we've launched a complementary program which works with a sort of broader group of people to do molt search for early detection. In addition, we've also sort of built out arms of the program related to conducting collaborative research at the nexus of management and just new science techniques, and also bringing information to build management capacity, so technical capacity in the state to train partners to do the management work in the most efficient and effective way, to interpret patterns about what's going on, and then to feed that information directly back into adaptive management efforts.
Wow, lots going on there. All right, you know the question's coming. Your favorite duo, partnership.
I have been, since the 5 minutes ago that I knew this question was coming, I've thought about nothing else. But I finally landed on something I'm pretty excited about, which is my favorite crime-fighting duo. If anybody remembers Inspector Gadget, Penny and Brain specifically are my favorite duo.
Okay, thank you. Again, welcome, and thanks for joining us. All right, next, we have Todd Zaki. Got to turn the page over because this is going to be. He is the Marine and Nearshore Program Manager for the Tulalip Tribe's Natural Resource Department and responsible for mapping, monitoring, assessing, and protecting the tribe's nearshore and marine resources on and off the Tulalip Reservation. He is an active member of the Pacific Marine and Estuarine Fish Habitat Partnership Steering Committee, Island County Local Integrating Organization, we heard a shout out for those earlier, and the San Juan Salmon Technical Advisory Group. Probably more, but the page is limited. Again, welcome, and tell us a little bit about your project.
Sure, yeah, thank you everyone. Yeah, I've been around for a while, so I get dragged into a lot of different committees and groups. My project actually originates originally in 2008, but 2013, a study came out that I worked with Eric Beamer at the Skad River System Cooperative, basically finding juvenile Chinook utilizing non-natal streams around the Whidbey Basin. This evolved into sort of along the railroad tracks. There's a lot of streams, in particular between Seattle and Everett, and it started basically expanding to be like we basically found there fish outside of the culverts, but not up the stream. So in 2018, I will give a shout out to Paul Schlanger, who's now at NSD, I believe. But he started basically a project, and it was a phase 1, and I'm now in phase 3 of this project, basically looking to prioritize streams along the railroad corridor for restoration. Then it evolved into phase 2, where we started trying to work with BNSF directly to come up with designs and trying to figure out how do you work with BNSF to do these things. That was completed, and now we are in phase 3, where we have BNSF is fully on board, is working with tribes on this stuff, and basically we've come up with, it has been quite a crazy route to get where we are, but basically we're coming up with designs, 10% designs for 9 sites to basically basically get these places ready for restoration applications to do basically daylight streams along the railroad, waterfront railroad.
Wow, congratulations on that. Big effort.
Thank you.
Yeah. All All right.
You want my combo?
Yes, I want your combo, your
It's a
partnership.
combo meal.
Yeah.
What came into my head was the Frosty and French fry combo.
Oh,
so,
nice. Oh,
so I haven't had, and now I'm gonna have to stop at Wendy's and get some Frosty
we
and
know where
French
you're
fries.
going after the summit. All right. Let's go on back to you.
All right, so my other project is the Kitsap County Abandoned and Derelict Vessel Program. And over the years, there were a few attempts made in Kitsap to improve our response to abandoned and derelict vessels, but nothing really stuck due to the lack of a coordinated and structured approach, lack of resources, and this continued need to address the vessel issue from multiple angles. So with this grant, we brought together over 50 partners from local, state, federal agencies, ports, tribes, and more to develop a local abandoned and derelict vessel program that builds on the existing outstanding derelict vessel removal program that the Department of Natural Resources runs. Our program has truly been locally driven. Our partners told us what they needed, and we listened and created procedures and resources, conducted vast outreach, and are tackling the issues from multiple angles, including prevention, incentives, education, and enforcement. We even accomplished some policy improvements at the state level, and the HSIL funds allowed us to support an additional staff member for outreach and support and to accommodate the additional lift associated with development and early implementation of a new program.
Wow. I'm not going to make you do another duo. Don't worry. That's great.
I don't know one.
Well, I feel like I might just dig in a little bit because what you were talking about was a lot of partnerships and new partnerships. And that's one of the things that the Habitat Strategic Initiative tries to fund is helping partners build new partners and bring others into the recovery community. Do you want to talk a little bit more about how the award allowed you to kind of build out those partnerships in a little more detail?
Yeah, so I'll focus more on the derelict vessel program for this one because derelict vessel land involves a whole group of stakeholders that, like me, from a habitat recovery perspective, I haven't really worked with a lot of those partners before, maybe a little bit here and there, but a lot of law enforcement engagement. Really, we rely on law enforcement to do derelict vessel enforcement. They're the boats on the water for the most part. And I think they were really fatigued with kind of the derelict vessel issue and lack of resources and support. And the ports are another big partner that I think were frustrated. We heard there was a lot of lack of coordination. There was no coordinated approach. Boats would leave one port and go to another across the water, and there was not a lot of communication. People didn't know who to contact. We also heard a lot of frustration about, like, the Navy. Boats would break free and float up to the naval shipyard, and then the Navy would take them and just drop them at some port, and a boat would be there tied to the dock, like maybe sinking, and the port didn't know where it came from. So there was just a lot of lack of coordination, and I think fatigue and frustration. And so, but we also had heard, through the Ecosystem Coordination Board and through our local partners that they wanted help with this issue. And so, trying to bring together partners where you don't already have relationships takes a lot of time, right? Because you have to figure out who to contact, kind of build that rapport of why they should, engage and invest their time in your group, and why this is going to be different than last time, And so having the grant to tell them, hey, we have this additional funding and capacity to really do something meaningful here and actually get you the resources you need and turn this into something structured and intentional, really helped us to get their engagement. And then once we had them at the table, it's just taken off like I did not believe would happen. I mean, people are so excited about it, and yeah.
That's great. Emily, how has this work allowed you to kind of build some new partnerships in this latest phase of work with the Green Crab program?
One of the relatively recent program expansions that we saw a need for after 6 or 7 years into the program and the effort was creating an opportunity for all of the sort of groundswell of folks who just reach out and say, like, I want to do something to help. And there were relatively limited entry points. In part, like the work of actually trapping for green crab is relatively technical. Not everybody really loves being in the mud as much as I do. And so to sort of lower the barrier to participating in a way that we think we can stand behind and say, this is actually meaningful, this is actually helpful, this is actually doing something, was to create a complementary participatory science program that is called Molt Search. And our most recent project has involved also sort of fleshing out that program where it involves it, and it really depends on participation by a lot of people, right? Like our monitoring network of 70 sites, that's pretty big. It takes about 300 monitors per year to run. But for the Molt Search program, if we're looking to do early detections and catch a really rare event, what we need is we just need lots and lots and lots of reports. So creating something that was low barrier in terms of training, in terms of data requirements and actual engagement, what does it ask of the people who participate, means that we get to reach out to new partners and new groups, new individuals. So I think part of that is ongoing. I mean, I think the very first part of that is we at Washington Sea Grant reached out to WSU Extension, right? There's a very natural parallel track there. And I think we were really excited about that partnership in terms of folks who already work with shoreline stewardship communities in county, and sort of leveraging some of that energy and things like beach naturalist programs and so forth, and having the time to build out that partnership and try different things for a couple of different years to say how can we configure this partnership in different ways to get us towards that goal of just really mobilizing as many people as possible is one of the things that we've been workshopping the last couple of years.
Great, thanks for sharing. All right, so you've been partnering with BNSF, and and some others.
Some others. I guess I could start the story off by opening up partnerships. I was years ago when Christine Gregoire was the governor. She did the climate adaptation working groups, and I was in one of these, and they had a BNSF consultant there, and we asked them, hey, are you planning for climate change, and if so, could you tell us about it? And the response we got was yes and no, like literally. So this is sort of the communication. So through this process starting in 2018, we were actually able to bring BNSF people on board and help us with the planning. I will note, though, that BNSF is a very siloed organization, and so trying to talk to the right person took quite a long time because they don't tend to talk across, they talk up and back down. And so you had to get it to a high enough level, and we basically invited BNSF, and over the years, it kind of moved up with the people that we were engaged with, and so that basically allowed us to establish a relationship. And then BNSF at one point actually made our phase 3 very difficult because we had to change our direction a little bit. But basically, they came to tribes and said, we want to work directly with you to basically replace culverts with bridges along the railroad corridor. So that changed everything. And then you bring in that component, and then you're talking about all of these stream crossings, and those are in different jurisdictions or private landowners. And so then there we're having, HSIL gave us time to basically allow us to develop those relationships. So like one spot is in the city of Everett. There's all this infrastructure around it, so there's more complication, but we have to talk to those people as well. Some projects you can do, it's just the railroad bridge that needs to be installed. Other places you have to actually rechannel the stream channel. There's infrastructure and stuff like that. So you've really had each one of these projects along the railroad tracks is very unique and requires collaborating in different ways. Everything from HOAs to individuals, then to cities and municipalities. So it gave us. We've been doing this now since 2018 with the HSIL, so it's given us that amount of time to build to where we are now. And now we're actually doing some of these. We actually have Tulalip is currently constructing 2 passage, well, actually I think 4 total, 2 along the shoreline and 2 upland ones. So we're actually doing the work now. So it's pretty exciting to have that happening. And then as part of that, I didn't mention earlier, one of the other outputs is we're actually developing an implementation guidance plan as part of a deliverable. So there'll actually be a document that you can actually pick up and look at and sort of see the process of outreaching to these different folks and sort of what the steps you need to take to kind of work with BNSF. So yeah, so it's been really interesting. The other tribes we've also worked with, so some other tribes might be doing some work as well at Carkeek Park in Seattle, as might be a project. So yeah, so it's pretty exciting.
Yeah. Just a little bit more on that guide, that implementation guide. Who's the audience for that? It's the recovery...
The audience is the restoration
community. Yeah,
essentially. I mean, there's multiple reasons for doing some of these projects, because there's obviously issues with flooding, because a lot of the existing culverts are undersized and cause backups and problems on the properties. So, that it's guidance for people to help solve that, how can I move forward with this? Because I remember for years I've been working along the railroad and doing studies along there, and I've talked to folks, and the only people they've been able to catch is the people working, doing the work on the rails, which is the maintenance crew. So they talked to them, but that didn't get them anywhere either. So this is sort of here's the direction we want to go, and spoiler alert, one aspect and one very productive is actually find a local tribe to work with, because BNSF has specifically said, we want to work with you. So that would be the first step. There are other routes, but yeah, that's one of theirs. BNSF has its own process, and I point you towards that as well in that one.
Yeah. It's interesting when you mentioned you were trying to partner with them, and then they came to you and said, we want to partner. And I'm sure you are oftentimes, being in a tribe, folks are reaching out to you for partnerships. And I don't know if there's any guidance to folks, and when you're forming maybe new partnerships, or considerations, or things that you go through to think about developing those kind of partnerships. I think in the panel earlier today, there was kind of a shout out hey, we want to partner, but there is limited capacity, we understand, and across all the organizations. So I don't know if there's any tips or considerations as folks are reaching out to you to partner. That was good timing, obviously. That was a no-brainer partnership, but I'm wondering if there's other times when you're having to kind of juggle different priorities or things like that.
There is a capacity issue. We only have so much capacity to do stuff. Usually we're just sort of planning out ahead. As far as reaching out to tribes directly, I guess the first step is just sort of having an understanding of the tribe's situation and sort of their perspective. One of the things that we're always told is sort of the sort of treaty rights component, where it's people need to understand the tribes never gave up their treaty rights, they kept them. So they were never given to the tribe from the federal government. They had nothing to do with it. The tribe just never ceded them away. So that's one thing is and then sort of the respect of the sovereignty and those things, and understanding that it's a sovereign entity and has specific things, and also kind of understanding where, it helps to understand also where the tribes kind of, what their, not that it's always easy, but sort of what's their goals, what's their concerns, what is their interests, and what do they want to do. And usually that's when when those things align, that's when you start to see stuff. And obviously in the restoration world, there's a lot of alignment. There is capacity issues, but if you're coming forward with an organized, well put together, and well proposed sort of thing, I think, tend to be receptive. If you're coming up and just sort of throwing random things at us, it's going to, get really weird things that we get people asking us to help out with sometimes. And I think you do have to be mindful of sort of being respectful of the ask too, because sometimes it can seem like you didn't want to involve the tribe until it became an issue for you. So that's one thing to think about. That's one component. You only invited the tribe because you haven't been able to get anywhere with what you're doing. So that's something that sort of can sometimes be a little bit sour. But if it's something where we want to help out the tribe and we want to do this thing and it helps everybody and it's mutually beneficial, I think that's a lot better way to go. But those are sort of some of the things when you approach the tribe. do some research on the tribe, look up, read the treaty, understand some of that stuff. I mean, I'm not going to, tell you to go deep into tribal law because, I think there was a quote from a guy, Vine Deloria. It's like the tribes are domestic dependent nations, the meaning of which is in 175 years of case law. So, don't dive too deep, but, respectful of our time and that what our goals, and if they align, then we're on board, then it's a lot easier to do.
Great.
And also bringing something to the table, I think, if it's access to a spot or, it opens up a restoration opportunity, yeah.
Yeah, that's some great tips. Emily, how about for you in Washington Sea Grant? What has kind of helped define success in collaboration for you or in partnerships? What are some of those key ingredients?
I think that when I think about partnership frameworks and the benchmark for successful partnerships, the phrase that comes to mind is is parallel play, right? You have kids or whatever, and they're doing the same thing next to each other but not interacting, right? Like, that's one form of partnership, but I think it's far from the sort of optimum or like the full potential of a partnership, right? The full potential of a partnership is something that emerges that the two entities could not have done independently, or even, it's not even additive, right? It's multiplicative. It's sort of an aspirational framework, right? And we're always striving to get our partnerships there. But the ideal situation is that there is something unique to both sides that complements and sort of pushes the other further. That's really abstract in that case. But I think it's like returning to that principle again and again. And are we just doing the same thing next to each other, versus are we actually mutually increasing the work that the other is doing?
Mm-hmm. Yes, it makes me think of reciprocity, which is something we've been talking about in some of the thinking about that in nature, but also in how we approach partnerships. Yeah.
Yeah. And that sort of prompts me to think about some of the ways that we practice reciprocity in our partnerships. The sort of biggest array of partners that we have are the monitors that participate in both of the programs, and the reciprocity for these folks investing their free time, their attention, their curiosity. Sometimes they're like clean shoes. In the work, in doing the work, is we say to them that we want you to be among the best informed people on this topic in the state, and that creates this mutually reinforcing feedback loop where these folks feel empowered in the work that they do. They become advocates for the issue that build social capital more broadly in either the restoration community or even just in the entire state for political action, for funding expenditures that have been, that the green crab issue right now has declared emergency around it, and that's it's a very rare and a hugely beneficial political instrument for leveraging funding on a topic that needs, sort of large amounts of funding and without a clear picture of where we are going to end up. And so I think that requires a lot of public goodwill, and so that is, that all of that, if you work it step by step back, comes from that, we are engaging you as partners in this, not as either a labor source or an audience.
Right. Yeah. Thanks. Brittany, how about you? What are some things at the county that you have really found are some key ingredients in strong collaboration, strong partnerships?
Well, so neither of our programs would be possible without our partners. The Natural Asset Management Program is really